Welcome to the Transport for New South Wales Last Mile Freight Innovation Forum. I am Richard Tubb from the Open Data and Innovation team at Transport for New South Wales. We would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the country in which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. It's such a privilege for us today to come together and see an impressive, diverse selection of representatives from logistics, delivery, technology, retail and government. We have some great speakers for you here today, and you'll hear from insights from across transport, including outcomes from our Transport Digital Accelerator research, the investigations into identifying innovative solutions which some of you would be involved in. We'd also like to give you some background on the work Transport has been doing in the Sydney Coordination Office and the Freight Industry Branch to assist businesses. Finally, we're going to hear about the Innovation Challenge process and how we anticipate it developing moving forward. We'll then have a Q&A session with our innovation panel at 10:45, with morning tea and networking at 11:20. We hope today that you take away from this some perspectives on freight, but more importantly, we'd like you to walk away with an understanding of the Transport Innovation and Accelerator process. A few lines of housekeeping. The toilet's located just before the escalators on the right, and in the unlikely event of an emergency, please remain calm and leave via the stairwell behind here to the right. Today's event will be live streamed, so hello to everyone watching at home and in their offices. And if you haven't already done so, please follow us on Twitter at DataTFNSW and feel free to tweet away. We'll be using the hashtag LastMileFreight today. It's exciting to have you all here today and a really positive next step as a collaborative group in how we can work together in the future. Kicking off the Last Mile Freight Innovation Forum is Transport for New South Wales Coordinator General Marg Prendergast. Marg leads Transport Coordination, which brings together the Sydney Coordination Office and the Transport Management Centre. This part of Transport for New South Wales leads the planning and coordination for proactive real-time management of the traffic and transport network and special events. It also manages traffic and transport disruptions for precincts including Sydney CBD and South-Est, Greater Parramatta, Sydney Airport, Macquarie Park and projects including all stages of WestConnex and Sydney Metro. So just a few areas there. Please everyone, if you'd like to make welcome Marg Prendergast.
Excellent. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. You know, we have got a massive task ahead of us with growth and the growth in the freight task. Busier cities, we've got a different vision for our cities. You know, we no longer want our CBD areas to be car dominated. We want them for people, for cyclists, pedestrians, for those who need to be there, which is often freight operators and of course public transport. I'm going to walk you through some of our challenges today, but I want to open with saying that we can't do this alone. We know we've got a growing issue to address. We know there's incredible growth of, you know, people on public transport, cars, freight. We actually need industry and we need smart people with a different way of thinking to actually help us make this happen. And we look for any solutions, you know, so we welcome thinking outside the box, helping us about how we can address this task. What I'm going to do in the opening is actually just set the scene of what we're dealing with. You know, there's a significant transformation across Sydney. There is incredible growth, but there's also incredible congestion. It costs us about $6 billion per annum. There's more people living in Sydney and there's more people working in Sydney. You know, we are the strongest economy in the country, New South Wales, and our population is expected to grow by more than 2 million over the next 2 decades. So with increased population, we do see increased pressure on our networks, both public transport and road. I've got to say, for the first time in 30 years, I've never seen such an amount of investment in our road and public transport network. We've currently got $51.2 billion across the next 4 years in major public transport projects, game changers like Metro, in light rail, in more bus priority, but we've also got some major road projects. Not only pinch points and getting rid of those, you know, intersections that constrain flow, but we've got the West Connexes, the North Connexes, which are crucial routes for freight through Sydney. But what our task today is focused on very much the hubs of the CBDs, and it's Sydney CBD is probably where I'm going to focus today, but I've equally got this at Parramatta CBD, you know, at the Liverpools, the Hurstvils and the other locations throughout Sydney as well. Our public transport has had massive growth. So in the last 5 years, we've actually grown by 35%, which is a huge, that's over a third. Like it took rail, you know, 160 years to get to 300 million. It took them another 5 years to get an extra 100 million to the 400 million mark per annum. So the growth we've got, so we have to do things differently. The growth we're seeing on the road network is construction traffic, freight traffic, and a lot of more weekend trips. So what we want to focus in is addressing the freight task. And so in Greater Sydney, freight's actually anticipated to grow by almost 50% in the coming decade. You know, in terms of the freight coming into our CBD areas and through Sydney, 80% is by road. So we're looking at more creative ways to actually manage that freight. I think the sleeper in the room, or the elephant in the room as we say, is probably e-commerce. E-commerce has got such phenomenal growth at the moment. Last year was 18% growth in 1 year of online sales. What that means for us is the proliferation of the little white van, okay? And we're seeing it here in the Sydney CBD. And also we know that people get stuff delivered to their offices because they're not home and they don't want to have to trek up to the post office on Saturday to pick it up. So, you know, I know I can talk to Lee Street. You come in of a morning and it's covered in parcels. And they're not like stationery and work stuff. It's like online goods. So actually how we manage that, we've also in the Sydney CBD, we've got a lot of residential growth as well. So we know that like online groceries is actually going through the roof as well. The other issue we've got in our CBD areas, no more than the Sydney CBD, is our limited curbside space. So we've got more and more bus movements, so we actually have to take more of the roadway for bus. We've almost virtually wiped out on-street parking for general traffic during the day. We still have at night and weekends. And we have to balance that limited curbside for bus movements and for freight. Because Sydney CBD, it's only half the buildings, if not, Michael probably have better stats, have off-road loading docks. So they actually rely on street. So the pressure, the demand, then you get a few tradies who park there, and they'll park there all day. And you know, the freight guys who are just trying to deliver something actually struggle. We've looked at lots of innovation to actually show sort of like concepts that could work, and Michael talked through those, Mike Stoko. But we're looking to you to help us manage this growing task. And you know, 12% of the traffic in the CBD at the moment is actually light commercial vehicles. And you walk through the city at lunchtime and you can see the amount of white vans in here. So we're trying to manage that carefully. We also have to be practical. Whilst, you know, everyone might say drones are the absolute solution, and they are a solution in many cases, in the Sydney CBD, our airspace is restricted. And from a security perspective, I don't ever see a massive drones landing. But we don't know in future, but there are issues with that because of the airspace. So we are thinking creatively of how else we can, you know, actually just get better efficiency and better use of our curbside space. And also, you know, more sharing loading docks and having more innovation with people who have major loading docks. I think the next slide is going to, I'll stand to the side to do this one. This shows you what's happening in the Sydney CBD right now. So when we started 4 years ago, when we closed George Street, which is when the Sydney Coordination Office formed, we only had the solid red line, which was light rail being built. Since then, we've now got Metro, the dotted line coming in with a new stop at Barangaroo, Martin Place, Pitt Street, through to Central, all the way out to Sydney Bankstown. So, and it's coming across, obviously, linking Chatswood through Crows Nest, North Sydney. So they're the transport projects. But all those other little dots on this map show private developments. And where we're at the moment is we have $22.5 billion worth of private development in the Sydney CBD. So they're projects that are over $5 million. Along the light rail route alone, counting all projects, even shop refits and, you know, fit outs and stuff, we've got $6.1 billion. But $22.5 billion in investment that's through the pipeline, it's in all different stages of planning, is really our challenge of a city that is transforming and changing. And you know, at the same time, we're trying to balance the movement needs to cater for all the businesses and residents and activity in the city with actually making this a fantastic place. more pedestrian zones. We have Pitt Street, George Street is a pedestrian zone between Wynyard and Town Hall once light rail's up and running, you know, so we're wanting this to be more people focused, but we acknowledge that we have this massive freight task to accommodate as well. If we look around Circular Quay alone, we have, you know, $1 billion in the A&P development. We have the one Circular Quay on the corner of Alfred and George. Behind it's the Lendlease development, which will have its own laneways. You know, we've got the sandstone buildings. And then ultimately, once we complete light rail, we'll actually have the redevelopment of Circular Quay interchange itself and ferry walks. If you follow along George Street, you see all of the dots. You know, the purple are completed, the yellow are underway, and the green are in the pipeline. Event Cinemas is another $1 billion development, combined commercial and residential. There is so much happening in this city. You know, and we go out to Parramatta, we can show quite a similar map with about $7 billion worth of development. Macquarie Park's got about $6 billion. But it's these congested areas with few streets. We get jealous of Melbourne. Melbourne's an expansive city with lots of grid, one way, more space. We only have certain routes, you know, and so when we close George Street for pedestrians, we actually push buses into Castlereagh, Elizabeth and Clarence Street. So we're trying to balance all this space, and we're trying to give curbside over by day, and you know, and actually just make sure that we can accommodate everyone. But with the growth, that's just becoming harder and harder. So what we're really looking for is smarter, sassy ways to do our business and to accommodate the freight task, but acknowledging that we're actually trying to make this a place and much more livable and just vibrant. So in terms of some of the other facts, we have about 630,000 trips into the city each day, and that's growing. And we've got about 35,000 commercial trips in and out of the city, city CBD every single day. We've got a lot of construction because with all that development occurring, we've got a lot of construction trucks, and we try to balance the cumulative impact of them all trying to get to the same place. The key for us is that we have to balance everyday movements, the vibrant city, but we have to supply and maintain this city. So with growing number of businesses and activities in the city, they need freight deliveries. So how can we do it smarter? And so the challenge is, how can we be more efficient? How can we do it smarter and still realise that we're accommodating future growth? E-commerce is obviously a big challenge for us. So smarter ways in terms of deliveries for e-commerce. I mean, consumers seem to demand that you can ring up in the morning and order a pair of shoes and have them delivered in the afternoon. There's a consumer expectation. That gives us in the transport world apoplexy, because the thought of, you know, people having to have something delivered on the day that's not crucial and critical, but that's what consumers want. So we have to balance that. Cities are changing, so it's about being a place. We've seen some great examples. So I think Michael will walk you through Barangaroo. They did it really well. They created a state-of-the-art loading dock, which then allowed them to give street level back to restaurants, places, you know, squares, sitting areas, to make the place really cool. And they've done that so well. And we're working with developers in the city of Sydney to actually make that happen, to actually, you know, in the development application process to look at better loading docks. But at the end of the day, we need to manage all these white vans, we need to use our curbside smarter, and we look to you to actually help us do this. It's a hot topic around the world. We've looked at London, we've looked at New York about how they manage this. We're also working with businesses themselves for passenger travel. So effectively, we're trying to spread that peak 1 hour, get people to travel earlier and later. So instead of having an hour peak from 8 to 9, we spread it. And we're doing a lot of work on that travel demand management side of it. There's a lot of new and innovative companies who are thinking about this, both transport operators and the e-commerce companies themselves, and many are in the room. You know, we want to use this process to see what else can we do. Are there things that we can do, be they digital or process or whatever they are? And today's going to be really cool. Michael's going to give you a lot more depth about the freight task itself in Sydney. We're going to give the outcomes of the Digital Accelerator research, which is really, really good insights for us. And we're going to outline the innovation challenge process. What I've got to say is this is a massive task for us, and we actually need your help. So thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing with us the importance of freight and the role it plays within this city. And obviously, it's ramping up to be even more in the future, and we need to have a plan as to how we can tackle that. It's great to see the work that you and your teams have been doing to help keep the people of New South Wales moving during this time of unprecedented transport infrastructure projects. Our very next speaker is Stephanie Salter, Director of the Future Transport Digital Accelerator, located here at the Sydney Startup Hub. Using human-centred design techniques, the accelerator helps to identify opportunities for startups and industry to collaborate with Transport for New South Wales. Stephanie leads a team of innovation specialists to support startups and industry to deliver products to market and to meet customer demand. Today, Stephanie will be sharing with us the Accelerator's Last Mile Freight Showcase. Please welcome Stephanie Salter.
Hi everybody. So if you don't know me already, I actually work in this building. So we're on level 11 at the Sydney Startup Hub. And the reason we really wanted to come and work at the Sydney Startup Hub was to collaborate with industry and startups, because we know that there's a great wealth of innovation, great ideas, new technology, and Transport really want to, I guess, open its doors and collaborate with all of you. So at the Accelerator, what we do is we look at problems that Transport have identified as opportunities for us to actually grow and change and innovate, and I guess transform the transport system. So we started a few years ago with a strategy called the Future Transport Strategy 2056, and we really from there we had a future transport technology roadmap. So that roadmap sets out what we at Transport are looking to work on, and there were 15 initiatives as part of that transport strategy, and the Accelerator was one of the items in that strategy to actually be set up and to actually collaborate with innovators, startups and industry to actually solve some of these problems. So what we do is we actually work with a lot of people from across the transport cluster. We go through a human-centered design process. We pop out the other end with an opportunity to actually help solve or to actually build out solutions and ultimately put those solutions out to market. But really our focus is to solve a customer need. So what is that customer pain point? Where is that customer opportunity to make things better? No, I know, I will be the person who knocks that over. So this is our innovation framework. So this is really how we work. First, we prioritise. So we work through what are the really great opportunities to actually solve in the transport space. And the freight challenge was an interesting one for us because we understand that there's going to be this huge growth, as Mark was saying, around e-commerce, Amazon coming into the market, and we know that this freight challenge will grow over time. So we wanted to be on the front foot. We really wanted to understand what does that mean, what's happening, really going out wide and talking to as many people as possible to really understand what is the problem we're trying to solve. So we go out wide, we go to understand, and then we narrow it down to actually validate, yes, this is a problem we need to solve. Yes, here is the opportunity for us to actually solve. And then we ideate, we come up with some ideas, we get some concepts, we the whole way through this process testing and talking to customers. Customers mean people who actually would be using the services and actually using the solutions. So really where we get to at the Accelerator is to that ideate phase. So I'm just going to use a little quickie thing, but so ideate phase essentially here to actually have a few concepts where we've tested it with people, we actually really understand what's going on, and then we have an idea of how we want to take it forward. They aren't the final solutions, to make that clear. It's really just seeing where are the really great territories that we want to work in, what do we want to experiment in, what do we think might work in this space. To actually do this, we have some great partners. One of our partners is here today, Katie from Optus, so thank you. And really we look at our partners to help give us great insights around how they approach these challenges. What are their innovation processes? For example, Amazon Web Services, they helped give us some information around how they store and process data. For example, Google, they have a lot of information around, is this thing Google Maps? So they have a lot of information around that where it actually helps with our process. Austrade, CBA, MasterCard, and City Innovate, and Microsoft, of course. So we have some great partners who really share with us and give us some great insights around how to innovate and how to actually solve these problems. So we have some great expertise in the room with us. So this brings us to our problem space. So where did we start? So we were looking at freight congestion within the CBD. So really for us, as Marg was saying, we're looking at those white vans and helping those white vans, or understanding the challenge those white vans are facing to do their freight task and how that's impacting the CBD with congestion. So Sydney is growing, obviously, and the population is set to reach 2.1 million within the next 20 years. That's a few extra people. So we really do need to start this future planning. We need to actually really understand what we need and then designing cities, spaces, solutions to actually meet that need. So obviously in this kind of environment where e-commerce is king, a lot of people are actually, there's some great products out there, there's some great services where you can order online. It's incredibly convenient. I use it as well. I can get my shoes delivered to my office. It's awesome. However, that obviously has a much wider impact on the network. And really, that immediacy and convenience is the key driver for customer behaviour. And really we have minimal control over that because retailers have to make money. So to be competitive within this market, really the immediacy and the speed at which they can get their products to their customers, which is what customers want, the immediacy of that product is really a key driver for them. So I guess from government's point of view, we kind of have minimum control over that. So that's how we landed on the initial problem statement with how might we reduce the number of freight trips coming into the city. So really we don't want freight trips in and out to the city. We want to kind of reduce or kind of optimise that as much as we can, really for the outcome of decreasing congestion and drive improved economic activity. So that's where we started. So then we conducted our research. So we spoke to a number of subject matter experts. So obviously we spoke to a lot of people across the transport cluster. We spoke to Sydney Business Chamber, City of Sydney, obviously a very important stakeholder in this, University of Sydney and Melbourne. So we've got some great information, great best practice, how are our cities working, what has been tried before, really understanding what's going on. We also spoke to customers, so Grounds, Coles, The Iconic, spoke to 8 delivery drivers, and we've actually spoke to 2 service technicians. So really we tried to speak to as many people as we could. And again, with that methodology of going wide, speaking to as many people as we can to understand what are their challenges, what are they trying to do. We also spoke to industry, so Ozpost, DHL, Toll, FedEx, Bonds. So we spoke to actually understand what that actually looks like for them. What are they trying to do? Where are their pain points? How are they solving the current freight challenge coming into the CBD? And then we actually went and observed to see what they're actually doing on the ground. So how are they doing those deliveries? So we sat in with the drivers. That was quite an amazing experience. To actually see a day in the life. So really to see what the challenges are in the van, on the day, how they're actually getting in and out, what are the challenges that they face when they're trying to just do their job. So after all that research, we landed on, we tried to narrow it down even further. So what are the sort of vehicles we're talking about here? Because freight is, you could do huge ports freight, so large shipping containers, or you could do heavy commercial vehicles, or you could, like we say, looking at the white vans. And what we found out was 12% are light commercial vehicles and only 3% are heavy. So that's why we focus our efforts on the 12% for light vehicles. And then we mapped out the journey. So the delivery journey all the way from the retail operator to the delivery operations, all the way to the delivery driver, and then to the receiver, so the person receiving the parcel. So that they're kind of very broadly the stages of the delivery process. We have a much more detailed map which steps this out in great detail, but quite broadly they are the 4 big steps. And so for us, we were looking to see where we could actually make a big difference. So in the initial stages, and that's around their core business, kind of their structure and how they build their business, that's quite strategic. So to change the structure of, say, an Iconic or an e-commerce business, that's something in that really initial stages, those early stages. And then you've obviously got the delivery stage, which is when the parcel actually starts to hit the road and actually move through the freight journey. That's another stage. And so we felt that we don't really have, in that kind of core business structure, we felt that that was quite a zone where we would have least or not as much impact in the short term. And so what we've decided to do, based on the following two reasons, is to focus on the delivery journey of the parcel. So the reason we did that was because we understood that for retail operators, they'll always prioritise their own outcomes. Of course they will. You're trying to run a business, you're trying to make money, and of course that makes complete sense. Also, optimization is not always a priority for the delivery operators. So by that we mean they have a service level agreement with their customers. So they're saying, if you order a parcel from us, we'll get it to you within a day, or we'll get it to you within 3 days. That's paramount for them, and that's great customer service because that's what customers want. So they're prioritising that. They also need to make sure their drivers are actually getting a good salary, so they're actually having enough deliveries to actually have a salary to actually maintain the business, still make money, and for the drivers to, I guess, be successful in their careers. And then only third is around optimising the delivery run. So we saw a lot of people already optimising the vans, so making sure that they're packing the vans to the top before they actually come into the city, so that they're actually not making multiple trips, but it's still third on the agenda. So what does that really mean? That means that we focused on the delivery journey. So we didn't focus on that kind of initial phase of how businesses are structured, because to be honest, that's how they're structured. And for government, for right now, for transport, we feel like there could be more opportunity, and I guess something we could do in the short term to actually improve that kind of that delivery journey from the time it hits the delivery operators through to the receiver. So again, that was that kind of quick tactical approach for the accelerator. We wanted to focus on those, 2 to 3 to 5 year outcomes of something we could do quite quickly. So this led us to the next insight, which was around reducing the number of kilometres. So for us to actually look at congestion, to actually narrow it down to the number of kilometres, and by that I mean sometimes drivers are actually coming in and they're circling around the city. So there's a lot of kilometres being driven around the city, and then that in turn creates congestion. So what might we do to actually reduce that behaviour, or that need to keep driving around? And then reducing the number of trips. So there's another opportunity for us to actually reduce the number of trips from where they've got their sort of receiving area, so where they've got their warehouse, coming into the city. So how can we reduce the number of trips coming into the city? So to understand this further, we built out a few personas. So obviously you've got the people who are the receivers, so people like myself who order online. And then you've got the operators who are actually the business who are selling their goods. But then you've got other behaviours. So some of them around like a traditional driver. So they've got their route, they do their regular route, they know where to park. It's the same routine, and they like their routine, and it's a kind of something they repeat on a regular basis. You've got your optimistic circler. So we like this guy. He comes into the city, he looks for a spot on curbside, his ultimate parking spot, doesn't find it, but he knows if he goes back around again, it might be free. So he keeps circling. So we observe that behaviour where people are pretty optimistic, but don't worry, eventually a parking space will become available. We've got the team worker. So this is somebody who's actually working in a collaborative way with other people, and we love this behaviour, where they're trying to actually help optimise the delivery process. So they'll work with people, for example, the hubber, who have a van, they find a legal and awesome parking spot, and they're actually delivering items out of the back of their van and doing short runs. So the van stays in one spot, and then they kind of use the van as a hub and do their deliveries out from the hub. And then the team worker might come in and actually bring in another big delivery, fill the van up so that the hubber can keep on working. You've also got other personas like what does that one say? The Anywhere Parker. This is a tricky one. So sometimes there are behaviours where a driver might have, say, goods which need to be refrigerated or need to be delivered within a certain time frame. So that might drive behaviours where they'll park anywhere. It might be legal, it may not be legal. So we observe that sometimes freight operators are just parking where they can, because parking is limited. They've got to get it delivered in a certain period of time. There might be an imperative, like I say, because the food will go off or will go bad. So these are the sorts of behaviours that we observed. And then we've got the overstayer. So somebody who finds a spot, it's a legal spot, however they stay there all day. So it may only be sort of quarantined for a few hours, but they might stay there all day, which means other people can't use the spot. So we came up with 4 problem statements to actually focus our attention on the types of things that we might look to solve in the future. So these are 4, and we always start with how might we, as we're good human-centered designers. So how might we create awareness of the bigger picture, of the bigger transport picture? So really that is that overarching thing of, if everyone's coming into the city doing multiple journeys and circling around the city, of course it's going to be congested. So then of course it's going to impact everybody else, and so then that kind of accumulates over time. So how do we, as transport, create an awareness of that bigger transport picture? How do we maximise positive behaviour? We saw a lot of really positive behaviour, people trying to solve the problem, people trying to be innovative and trying new things and trying to actually solve for the congestion and solve for optimising their freight trips. So how do we encourage and maximise that positive behaviour? Then we thought, how do we make deliveries more efficient? So by making the deliveries more efficient, it helps us, but also hopefully it will help the business. And then how do we encourage greater end-to-end collaboration? So how do we create that great ecosystem or a network or I guess a collaborative ecosystem where people can join forces and actually work together to make this a far more efficient city? So we explored a few concepts. So the first one was around creating awareness of the bigger picture, bigger transport picture. So what we did was look to see if we could build a system across the government to monitor how freight is being delivered. So if we understand what freight is being delivered across the city, that might then give us a better understanding of where are the pain points, where are the pinch points, and how then we could actually look at ways to improve the freight movements. So that was what we looked at. So this is the concept. So we were looking at a system to support the correct use of the loading zones and provide a view on how freight is delivered in the city. And then that would allow us to actually have a case for change. Data is a great enabler for good decision making. So we need the data to first understand what's happening before we can make decisions to make a change. So we thought what would happen is we could actually have a driver register their vehicle online. They could actually get access to the new loading zones. You'd have a little RFID sticker on your phone. You'd tap it when you actually get to your parking space. There'll be sensors on the parking space to actually understand how long people are staying, if they're staying within the allocated time or if they're overstaying. And then they actually could go and then do their deliveries, and then they could tap off when they're finished. Imagine if we could do that. And these were the kind of outcomes we were thinking that might encourage. So it would actually give us some evidence and give us some data to understand the freight challenge. We think it could improve the parking compliance because if people know they're being monitored, potentially they might be more compliant. It might actually change that bad behaviour, and it also might create that case for change. So we understand what people are doing, what they're trying to do, we can actually start to figure out what solutions best fit their needs. So the other one we were looking at was maximising positive behaviour. So how might we have delivery spaces that I guess meet the needs of delivery operators so that we can create those positive behaviours. So the concept that we looked at was around allocating spaces and then there would be bookable spaces. So what would happen was your delivery run would commence, you'd get to your bookable space, you would then set up that hub I was explaining before, so potentially you could have a hub and you could use that bookable space to actually do that delivery out of that hub, rather than doing one delivery, circling back around the city, doing another delivery, circling back around the city, doing another one. Potentially you could also use lockers. So I know Mark will talk through some of the locker trials that we've done previously in transport, but potentially you could actually use that as a way to then, if the driver comes in, puts the deliveries into a locker, and then potentially you could get riders or walkers to actually do the last mile part of that journey. And again, going back to what we're trying to solve here is we're trying to reduce the number of kilometres and number of trips into the city by freight operators. And then you could also have that collaboration. You could actually have somebody working with the hub operator to keep filling up the van. Again, so that Y van doesn't have to lose their space, go back all the way back out and then all the way back in again. You could have somebody topping it up. And again, the outcomes we're trying to look for is reducing those kilometres. And we want to trial to see if this is something that could be sustainable and workable for businesses. Build that case for change and understand the value of the spaces, and we can alter that accordingly. But again, it's all evidence-based. If we have more data and we understand what's happening, it gives us a case for change. The third one, making deliveries more efficient. So how might we improve visibility of the delivery space usage? So we can make it easier for drivers to find and get that ideal, that plum spot. So we had a lot of the drivers talking about, I've got my spot and I know the spot I want, and I'll keep driving around until I get my spot, because that's the best place to be to actually make my delivery. So if we have that data, then we can actually understand what people need. So imagine he's not driving here, by the way. He's being very safe. He's stationary. He's just looking at his phone before he starts a vehicle, and he's looking to see where are the spots before they start to make their delivery run. So he has a look at his app. You can see there's a spot available, and he can actually look and see what spaces are unused and what he can actually book in. He can see that there's a spot vacant. He sees how far it is away from where he is. There's an in-built sensor and provides that data, and then you can commence that delivery run. And again, the same sort of outcomes. So really, and I know the outcomes are repetitive, but really what we're trying to do is reduce those kilometres, encourage that collaboration, and really understand what are the needs to feed that data. And so the last one was around collaboration. So how do we actually help retailers, drivers, and receivers to start exhibiting more collaborative methods of delivery? So this is a very new one. So how do we make those inbound and outbound freight trips cause less congestion in the CBD? So if they can start collaborating, it's our hypothesis that could potentially reduce congestion. So the concept we looked at was having that open data platform, and then you could have those drop-off and pick-up centres for anyone to participate in the CBD. And again, back to the locker concept, if you have the central locker, you could have a place, if it's an open locker, where you could actually have these delivery banks, and then you could have other models or other people actually taking these deliveries to and from where they need to go. We heard a story about retailers within the city would have an online order, they would walk it down to the post office would then send it to their consolidation warehouse out in Western Sydney. It would actually get put into the right van, come back into the city, and then delivered to the person who potentially could be in the building next door to where it started. So to try and reduce the number of kilometres and the number of trips in and out of the city, maybe this could be something we could look at. So that's the outcome for the accelerator, and that was the sort of research that we did, and a bit of an overview of the, I guess, the insights and the kind of behaviours and outcomes that we're looking for. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Steph, for sharing with us the innovation journey the accelerator's taken to arrive at the Freight Showcase. It does appear, however, that there's a bit of a theme going. I believe that most of the freight congestion is caused by new shoes, so maybe everyone here in the room could rethink their next pair of new shoes, and maybe that might help. Coming up next is Mike Stoko, who leads the Freight and Servicing team within Transport for New South Wales City Coordination Office, the SCO. The SCO is focused on managing the transport activities within Sydney CBD and other major locations across the metropolitan area, while major transformation work is being undertaken on both large public and private sector transport projects. Michael's role within the SCO is focused on the efficiency of current CBD freight and servicing activity and the future strategies that will serve the city for decades to come. Please welcome Mike Stokoe.
It's great to see so many of you here today. A lot of people I've done work with in the past and over the last few years. Good to see you all. What I'm going to do is talk a bit about urban freight, what the challenges are, and what the challenges are that are going to lead towards the innovation in this space. There's a lot of you know, look, it takes many forms around the city. A lot of you may actually recognise some of those drivers on there. We have a multitude of challenges coming in. It's a growing city. People are ordering more, as you know, we heard about Stephanie and shoes and others, other people in the room who love to frivolously order things online as well. So, you know, we've got all these different activities going on. It's a growing city. There's new service propositions. You guys are probably putting in place new service propositions about how to actually deliver things faster, deliver more things. Look, and you know, I'm sure a lot of you in the room as well are very happy about the more volume that you're actually being given to actually go about delivering as well. It's good business for you, basically. But obviously, from our perspective, it presents challenges with all the white bands and activity coming in. Over the last few years, we've been working basically since the end of 2014 to address some of the challenges of the transformation coming in. What we actually set out to do is we had three aims. First of all, there was about the maintaining the productivity of the CBD whilst the transformation was occurring. To some degree, look, that never ends. You know, we focused at the time 4 years ago about light rail, and now there's more projects. There's the metro coming up, and after the metro, I'm sure there'll be more projects coming up. So there's a bit of a never-ending theme in terms of that innovation and transformation. It's always been on our mind about the efficiency of freight and logistics, and then we've also had the consideration of growth. Well, I can tell you, since we started in 4 years ago, we know there's been substantial increase in growth. We know there's been innovation. Just go out now. You know, there wasn't a Deliveroo driver on the streets or an Uber Eats driver deliveries 4 years ago. That's happened. You know, there's just constant innovation, constant new service propositions going on. What's always been important to us is you have commercial interests, we have economic interests about our network, and I'm sure a lot of people maybe within their corporations have social and corporate social goals within their business or environmental goals within their business. So it's always been important to think about what are the solutions in this space, what do we do in terms of innovation without robbing Peter to pay Paul. So, you know, when we talk about innovation, when we think about what we can do, that's always been something on our mind about how we actually address that challenge. Lastly, look, over the last 4 years, we've done a hell of a lot of work to maximise the opportunities for curbside space. Just actually been out walking around the Circular Quay in the city this morning with one of the people in the room here, looking at some of the challenges they face. We know it's a continuous challenge. I'll talk a bit more about this in a second. But we have done absolutely everything we could just to eke out every bit of opportunity that's there in the system. Back to that, the comment there. So we stood up in early 2015 and we had to tell people we were going to take away about 15 to 20% of loading zone capacity in the city. Now, between these 2 points, look, the capacity of the loading zone in the city is reduced by about 12–13%. Okay, so we've exploited every opportunity we could to maintain whatever loading zone we can, and that's using the bus corridors that we need on a night. Well, we've got them as loading zones in the morning. Point is, look, we know it's never going to be enough. We know in a growing city, we know there's never going to be sufficient space, and of course it's obviously contestable space. We heard from people in 2015, give us information, give us time to plan. We live by that mantra. Whenever we have information that's essential to you guys, we push it out and just give you the opportunity to think about the longer term, the shorter term planning opportunities, about how the actual city's doing, what restrictions are coming up in the next week. Lastly, a couple of things on here. We're working hard, and we're working again with some people in the room about how we actually look at maximising the capacity that we can develop off street. I've got a couple of examples to talk to you about that in a minute. Lastly, about encouraging and facilitating innovation. Many of you in the room may have been along to see the Courier Hub space that we set up, and it's still ticking along. It's still going along nicely. We keep trying different bits of innovation. We've had, we've got through that, we've actually taken a fair amount of vans out of the CBD and replaced them with, you guys have replaced them with bikes. What we know is a bike can get around the city twice as fast as a van can to do 10 deliveries in a loop around the city. We know that if a van's actually going from there and trying to do this loop of deliveries, then that guy's going to spend 70% of his time walking, because he finds, back to what we're talking about, the loading zones, he finds a loading zone and then he sets off on a walking tour to actually to do his deliveries. And that's something that's been confirmed from other cities around the world. They see it. The irony is that the guy on the bike gets around the city faster. We had the guys wired up with telematics to actually do this. The guy in the van burned more calories than the guy on the bike. So irony is, if you want to lose weight, drive a van. So because you're going to spend 70% of your time walking. But what it actually raises is saying, well, what's the actual van doing? What is it? It's actually just coming in, and it's a bit of a mobile warehouse, to be quite frank. It's parked there in the curb, and the guy's gone up and walking. So is that a good use of that asset? Our key challenges, look. First of all, we talk about the reductions in loading zone space. Kudos to the City of Sydney. They have a curbside hierarchy, and loading zones, supported business, is one of the highest things on that list. There's the taxis for point-to-point transport, servicing the public, and then it's loading zones, okay? So that means, to the point that Mark's made, we've kind of exploited every opportunity we can to put more loading zones into the city. So it's kind of the case of, that's it guys. There's actually no more opportunities, or very limited opportunities, to find space to put more loading zones around the city. So the question is, well, where do we go now? The loading dock provision, there are somewhere around 220 loading docks within the city. There's big ones, there's one van ones. There are opportunities, and that's an area that we continue to work with about, well, how are those actually loading docks being used? We know they're all standing empty from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon through to about 6 o'clock the following morning. So, is there an opportunity basically about that off-street space, about finding alternative ways to work? Last point on here, you guys, this freight is, apart from the step issues, is that we know it's a non-discretionary task. We know you come in here to service customers, they've said they want the delivery at 9 o'clock in the morning. We know that's a non-discretionary item. It's time sensitive, you've made a promise to the customer to do it, so you're setting off to actually do it. And as Mark says, look, we're trying to move the cars out of the way, we're trying to leave the space for the people who actually need to be in here and are doing this specific task. Lastly, the city's undergone massive construction. We've got a lot of extra transport coming into the city, not just for the actual e-commerce, but we know that we've seen this massive growth, this doubling, trebling of the actual construction traffic coming into the city. Not just the heavy vehicles, but also the light vehicles coming in, the guys coming to actually work on these sites as well. And we know a lot of those guys are taking public transport, but we do have this large amount of extra traffic. Look, as we go forward with our future transport, we have a movement in place framework that we're looking at to try within transport to actually try and plan about how we actually use cities, and the point is about making them more people orientated. What we've been doing internally, my team, is being a voice to actually represent industry and actually take the points about how industry is working and providing this feedback internally into it as well. And there's a couple of good points on here. You know, we've added this bit about the bottom about well, what's happening in each of these spaces from the logistics perspective. One of the challenges is we know we've got to change that big truck coming in from Western Sydney into something more acceptable, more space conscious by the time it actually gets to this point here and is doing a delivery. A couple of points on that. First of all, you know, there are things that can be done. London, the West End of London, they've reduced 144 waste vehicles down to 9 going down Bond Street because you've got one vehicle after another all doing the same thing. So that's been achieved through the business improvement districts, the bids within London. So a great example of how efficiency can be improved to reduce the number of vehicles coming into a CBD. Lastly, and you know, we consider an important point that our team are getting across into this process is that the more successful a place, the more freight it's going to get, because freight is a derived demand by people. So you know, we've seen some amazing examples of George Street, when we've opened George Street up to the public, and people thronging down there. You know, you go in on a sunny lunchtime, and there's everyone sitting down there consuming, basically generating freight demand and service demand to take the waste away after them. So that's an important point that you know we are bringing to the party internally about the importance of freight coming into the city. The more successful it's going to be, the more freight is going to be. A couple of international examples to show you about the innovation that's actually happening. And again, some of you may actually seen this. I love this example. The reason why I particularly love it is that this is a logistics depot 400 meters from Buckingham Palace. Okay? So if you can create a logistics depot 400 meters in the heart of London from Buckingham Palace, what can we do here? Okay? It's all electric. They've got little buggies, they've got electric vehicles shuttling in from outside of it. But you know, it's a great example of you know, just the innovation. Sending multitude little vehicles into the heart of a city by actually landing it on the ground and then having small, spatially efficient vehicles actually working in the heart of the city. New York example. Amazon, they want to give all their customers a 1 hour, 2 hour fulfillment into the heart of Manhattan. What do? Well, you set up a warehouse on the 5th floor of a commercial building, and you use the subway to actually go around and do deliveries. So there's a question there, look, about when Amazon are tipped, and this was from an article in the Sydney Morning Herald, they're tipped to a 28 billion share of the local market through speed. Well, does that mean that we're going to be flooded with more white vans coming into the CBD? Or are we going to see the innovation in this space that actually says, well, should we be actually talking to you guys, talking about, well, how do we actually accommodate these things, these solutions into the heart of the city? We've also got a neat, if you know, query Manhattan in New York, you see all these lockers in these little lifestyle places, in lots of gyms, lots of convenience stores, about how they're actually meeting the customer requirements. Slightly closer to home, we know there's innovation and we know there's good things happening here. Mark said earlier about Barangaroo. Any of you been down to Barangaroo? Any of you work down at Barangaroo? I'm sure there's 1 or 2 people in the room. You walk down there and it's beautiful. There's not a delivery van inside. There's not a tradie inside, basically. And you talk to people down there, and they're sipping their cup of coffee from one of the 57 different places you can buy coffee down there, and never give a thought to actually how it's gone there. But below their feet, 10,000 times a month, there's all these delivery vehicles coming in the basement. Massive basement down there that's being thought out in terms of this precinct plan. That's accommodating all the deliveries. What it's done is created this great space above, kind of bit of a Disneyland concept, to be honest, with all this activity going on behind the scenes. But that, but it's a good approach about how to actually plan for logistics and servicing activity in a precinct approach. Similarly, there's other things going on in Sydney. We've, the first example, and I know there's people in the room that we work with on this, Martin Place, the new development here. We've held Macquarie Bank to task, basically, about how you're going to provide logistics innovation for a massive development at Martin Place, which is constrained by having a metro line in the basement. So what we're going to have through that, and you can go and read those documents online from the DA of this, the off-site consolidation to reduce the number of freight vehicles coming to the CBD. Down at Mascot, we're starting to see developments occurring in Sydney, which are going to have mixed-use developments going on. So commercial developments, warehouse developments, all in the one building, multi-storey developments. Well, I think I expect in the future we'll see some of those actually coming closer and closer, or maybe even into the heart of the CBD. Lastly, and this has been going on for a long time, you go and hang around in Pitt Street Mall and you'll see this guy walking around and pushing a big trolley around from underneath Westfield and doing deliveries around that precinct. That's a tall guy who's actually going around doing various deliveries. But the point is that they consolidate it out of Eastern Creek, come in, and then that guy's actually, he doesn't need a van. The last thing that guy actually wants with them on a daily basis is a van, because then he's got to actually think about, I need to go and move my van and find a new parking spot every 10 minutes. They dump the stuff into a logistics space and he goes around and does all the deliveries. So what this is all leading to is the current example of, and again, we saw this when we were walking around this morning, the congestion, the challenges of everyone trying to actually get to the customer with multiple different vans. Alternatively thinking, well, how do we think about this differently? Is the opportunity basically, and the recurring theme throughout this presentation I'm doing is about the use of space versus sending in vehicles. How do we use urban logistics space to offset the actual number of vehicles that need to come in, or quickly turn them around and get them out again, and then think about what are the different opportunities to actually get those deliveries done. So the guy in Pitt Street has probably got a bright future ahead of him. The guy coming out of the courier hub, doing deliveries around the city faster than the van can, has probably got a bright future ahead of him. So I think there's a whole bunch of opportunities there basically around the innovation space here. There's definitely, we know there's an increasing market need. There's pressure on the system to encourage change. We're encouraging change in this space. I think we've all got a bit of an idea of what the actual future looks like and how it's all developing and what the actual future demand is going to be. We want to encourage the innovation perspective of saying, well, we want a better outcome. What can we actually do better? How might I actually grow my business to accommodate these actual future changes and still have a profitable business at the end of it? We know there's equipment in there that is coming forth. If it's not in Australia now, we know it's around overseas, about how we can better operate in cities. We know there's the processes and systems, and again, some of you guys in the room today are actually developing or improving those systems that are capable of making it more efficient. And lastly, look, I think that as Mark's saying, we need to work with you guys. We need to build the partnerships between ourselves, between the different players in the space to find out, well, what are those innovation challenges? And that's kind of why we're here today. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour look about our challenges and what we see going on around the world. And thank you. And I'll hand over to
Thank you very much. It's great to see why innovation is so important and needed right now in that urban freight space. Just a quick shout out to everyone watching online as well. We've had lots of great questions. I've also been told that someone's watching this live on a bus in Japan. So hello to everyone watching today. Our next speaker is Matt Stockwell, Freight Strategy Advisor at Transport for New South Wales in the Freight Strategy and Planning area. Matt is working on the implementation of the New South Wales Freight and Ports Plan 2018 to 2023 and coordinating the review of freight data and was the creative force behind the new Freight Hub website. Matt will be sharing with us today his visions on where we could take freight data in the future. Please welcome Matt Stockwell.
Good morning. The New South Wales Freight and Ports Plan 2018 to 2023 was published in September last year. This is a supporting plan to future transport. Here we go. There are 117 initiatives in the plan, 9 of which are on today's topic and include improving the efficiency of the urban freight task and improving planning for last mile deliveries. And there are further 5 initiatives on freight data. Part of future transport, we've been asked to come up with a cost calculator as well as more data sets on improving freight efficiency and freight volume. This means we have an opportunity now to make improvements to our freight data pages. So today there are 3 points I'd like to get across. We want to publicize the data sets that we've got and understand how you use them. Secondly, we want your feedback on how we can make our data sets better and what you would like us to publish in the future. And finally, we want to be seen as a trusted partner with you to have data as a service to spark innovation. The freight pages were published at the same time as the plan back in September, and we've had great feedback from industry on them. iMove is a consortium of industry, government and research partners who use data and emerging technologies to assist the way Australia moves. They also have a remit to improve freight coordination. And Ian Christensen is Managing Director at iMove, and he has described these pages as a leading example of freight data exchange in Australia. Publishing data supports evidence-based policy, improves transparency and accountability, and provides a platform for innovation. In the next 20 years, as we've heard, the freight task is expected to grow by half in Greater Sydney. For the CBD envisages the Eastern Sydney by the Greater Sydney Commission, the population is expected to increase by 32%. Consumer goods are expected to increase by 88%, and we've heard a bit today about the e-commerce sales increasing. So, with the prevalence of smartphones, better and faster internet connections, and behavioural change, people get used to shopping online, we've seen between 2012 and 2017 e-commerce sales doubling, and we expect them to see them almost double again by 2022. Understanding these changes to the freight in Sydney will ensure we put the customer at the centre of these major infrastructure initiatives. And Sydney's freight network supports not just the rising population, but also the whole of New South Wales and Australia, connecting it to international markets. And we have 3 pages of freight data on our website. The first is the Freight Performance Dashboard. It shows strategic targets from the Freight and Ports Plan and provide the metrics for demonstrating the success of the plan. The 6 visualizations are on maintaining rail freight paths through the Sydney Metropolitan Network, increasing the share of freight in and out of Port Botany, rail mode shares rate in and out of Port Botany to 28%. We've got the middle measures here in the screenshot, which I'll talk to in a moment, to measure fatalities and serious injuries from crashes involving heavy and light trucks. Finally, we've got the road journey time reliability to ensure that 90% of peak travel on key roads is on time. And under development, we have a visualization to measure high productivity vehicle access on the New South Wales road network. The strategic freight forecasts, this is a visualization developed by the Transport Performance Analytics, will enable industry as well as councils to plan for the growth of the freight task. A base year of modelled commodity movements is created from a range of sources such as the Australian Bureau of Statistics, rail and road infrastructure managers, industry associations, companies' annual reports. And this model data is then forecast 40 years into the future at 5-year intervals. In the future, we plan to take this modelled and forecast data and map it onto the road and rail network. And this screenshot shows modelled commodity movements for the CBD, but because we use statistical areas for, the area stretches down to Port Botany and the airport. So as a result, this visualization shows a lot of manufactured goods and construction materials being moved. So this is actually an origin visualization. Now, the Open Data Hub allows our stakeholders, industries, universities, and all layers of government to drill down on the raw data. And this visualization published simply facilitates the understanding of the data we have. So we see the previous 2 pages that I referred to as a gateway to these Excel documents here. We want our stakeholders to take this data and future data sets we publish and mash it up and develop new models, practices, and partnerships we can't necessarily perceive today. We have 5 objectives in the Freight and Ports Plan, and the first 3 are basically on improving freight efficiency, infrastructure investment, connectivity, capacity. The second objectives are on sustainability and safety, and these will only become more important to the freight task. This map shows crashes involving heavy vehicles in the CBD, which led to 7 fatalities and 31 serious injuries over a 5-year period between 2013 and 2017. No deaths or serious injuries are inevitable or acceptable, and improving safety is at the core of our plan. The Centre for Road Safety will soon publish a wealth of information, which we will link to. It's an incredible data set. The CBD loading zone transactions data is from the City of Sydney, and we have made them publicly available on the My Sydney website. Every time a delivery or service vehicle uses a loading zone facility on the street, the driver picks up a ticket, and this visualization shows aggregated meter readings in the Sydney CBD. It gives a snapshot into the time of day the zones are used, as well as the busiest areas in the city. Behind this visualization sits 18 million rows of data going back to 2014. It is simply a huge data set. Circling streets, as we've already heard, looking for a park adds to congestion. So we're interested in innovative solutions to managing this finite space. For example, predictive insights can detect patterns in the availability of spaces. So I've given a rapid run through of some of the freight data sets we have, very rapid run through, but there's the data sets that we don't have that I want to talk about. To repeat, we want your feedback on how we can make our data sets better and understand what data sets you would need in the future. We're not looking to compel anyone to share data with us, and we're not looking for order books or commercially sensitive information. We also recognize how hard it is to succeed in this area, because it takes a lot of effort to pull together data sets. That said, our goal is to make your lives easier. So we want to act as a partner, a facilitator with industry, where they can share their data with us, and we can host and visualize the data as a service. If we can pull together multiple companies' data sets in one supply chain sector, we can then present aggregated and anonymized data on our website, improving industry's holistic understanding of their supply chain. The goal is to assist freight consultants, in-house data analysts, who can use the data and make connections and augment their own models. RMS has speed and volume data on key roads in Greater Sydney. The roads around the CBD include the Western and Eastern distributors and the Carhill Expressway. And this data shows direction of travel, volume, and speed of traffic, and from it, volume capacity can be derived. It is obviously a huge data set. And while traffic count data does show heavy vehicle movements, which for us include buses, it doesn't distinguish between light commercial vehicles, which are carrying freight, and personal trips made in cars, which are not carrying freight. So it's a hugely powerful data set for understanding the roads, but incomplete for understanding freight. And this is what aggregated and anonymized telematics data can look like. This data is from the Transport Certification Australia, TCA, and represents approximately 15% of heavy vehicle journeys on 15 key freight corridors in Sydney. It's from the IAD. We can see the type of truck, number of trucks, and distance traveled on the road. And this visualization shows the origin and destination information. TCA is an arm's-length government or quasi-government organization with safeguards around the collection, use, and dissemination of data. They are a safe harbor whose bread and butter is analyzing telematics. And this is how we can build trust with industry and reassure you that your data won't get to RMS compliance. And this goes to my third point in the presentation. So we want to be seen as a trusted partner, to provide data as a service to spark innovation. I know some companies in this room already provide or are in discussions with Bitra and TCA to provide telematics data. And Bitra and TCA have specialists who can create visualizations of the cleaned up data and present back valuable insights to those companies. But telematics helps transport as well to get a better understanding of the freight network. It shows origin and destination information for freight on our roads, building up a picture of the strategic freight network. You can see where the pinch points are. It improves our understanding of the importance of the roads of freight, and it can inform locations for rest stops for heavy vehicles. The ultimate goal, though, is to facilitate evidence-based policy, such as access decisions, and prioritize investment and maintenance budgets. The next step in the evolution of data is building up a picture of what's in the back of the van, so we can facilitate more efficient supply chains. So, for example, perishables such as fresh food deliveries are prioritized in the morning instead of Stephanie's shoes, which could potentially wait for the afternoon. Can they wait? Maybe not. The goal here here been to smooth out the freight task over the course of the day for last mile freight deliveries. As the freight supply chain data picture becomes more complete, the higher the likelihood that efficiencies will be found. So the takeaway from today's presentation is that I want to continue with or start conversations with those that need freight data and with those industries who can see a benefit in sharing aggregated, anonymized, and hopefully automated data sets with us. We want to ensure the data we host on our pages is relevant to industry and which satisfies a business need, and that way we will get better buy-in with you. This visualization shows Strava GPS tracking map of one delivery van on one day in the CBD. The data was collected by a member of Mike's team. And when Mike presented the data back to the company, they were extremely positive and immediately realized the benefits, the planning that this data gave them. And for us, we can see where the van goes and how fast it's traveling, as well as time of day. When the van is parked, and as this was a phone app in a pocket, we can see where the courier was. The little areas in the map in pink are where the courier has been walking around. And as Mike has already told us, the courier can spend up to 70% of their time walking. And because of imperfect knowledge of where parking options are available. Areas of high activity might be perfect places for hubs and the provision of loading zones. We can see how in this visualization, you can see how collecting basic telematics data can be done at little cost with apps on smartphones. And we would love to get last mile freight CBD data for a large number of vehicles over a prolonged period of time. The benefits of this data to industry, couriers, logistics solutions providers, as well as to us, New South Wales government and local councils, is huge. Open data is not a single magic bullet to managing the rising freight task, but it is an important tool which will provide widespread benefits across the supply chain. If you've got any questions about the freight data, please email me. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's great to see where freight data could take us in the future, and if anyone here in the room has any data that they could potentially share with Matt, also hunt him down afterwards in our morning tea. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to help you in your endeavour to share the data with us and be able to make it better for everyone. So thank you very much. Our next speaker thrives on driving revolutionary initiatives to transform the way products and services are developed and delivered to customers. He was one of the visionaries behind Transport for New South Wales Open Data Hub and has paved the way, leading Transport for New South Wales to collaborate with startups and industry to get better and more cost-effective digital products in the hands of New South Wales customers sooner and more efficiently. He is Mike Kostakis, Director of Open Data, Innovation and Apps at Transport for New South Wales. Mike will be sharing with us today the next steps, including the co-design, collaborative innovation and data sharing on this last mile freight innovation journey. Please welcome Mike Kostakis.
Thanks, Richard. That made me sound really awesome. So I'm going to lift a bit. I think I'm between some great presentations and morning tea, so I might talk through next steps. So basically, you've got some good presentations, but if you go back to Stephanie's discussion around the accelerator, this is about the next steps and how we bring this from talking about where the great opportunities lie and the big challenges, big freight challenges that we have, but how we bring it into reality and work with some partners in this room maybe about good outcomes for our customers and industry. To get there, I'll reflect a bit about where we've come from and some great successes. And I apologise, I think there are some familiar faces, so you might have heard and seen some of these stories and heard my one-liners, but if you hear them, please laugh appropriately. For those that are new to the Accelerator and Transport's innovation approach, please take from this the opportunities will be presented over the next little while to work with us and how we bring it into reality. So taking a bit of a step back as to why we're here, back in the dim dark days of 2016, Transport had a Future Transport Technology Summit where we got technology leaders from around the world and startups and technology companies to come into Sydney and give us some advice on what we need to do as a transit authority to meet the demands of the future. Mark talked about the growing demand on the transport network, we as a transit authority know there's a lot we need to do now so that we can actually meet those demands of the future. And technology is seen as one of those. So the big questions that came out in 2016, where do we need to put our investment now so that we're prepared for the future? As much as I'm tempted to go through the framework and all the outcomes that came out of it, the key takeaways you should take is since 2016 we've been working in earnest to get a few things in place. We've got a world-leading digital accelerator upstairs wanting to work with industry, and something very close to my heart, because it's in my job title, is we've got the Transport Open Data Hub. Now this has really shown that our investment has been of great value. The data is getting used with vigour. I think it's updated daily, but I think we're approaching 3 billion requests for data via the Open Data Hub. But what's very important for us is we've got a broad worldwide community of users that use our data but come to us with some great innovations. And there's some 3,500 applications that use our data. But it's not about data, it's about how we bring good solutions to customers and to industry. So it's more of a proxy. What we're saying is we are open for business, for sharing our data with those that have got some great ideas. But we've also got some great SMEs, subject matter experts, great resources that if you've got a good solution, we want to partner with you to take it forward. This is a story that I love talking about, but it's really ingrained now in transport's culture. This is where it all really started for us. Back in 2012, even further ago, back when I was 15, there was an app developer that who knows TripView? Hands up, who knows TripView? Who uses it on a daily basis? So back in 2012, TripView was born. Who would have thought packaging transport information in an app and putting it on people's smartphones? What a great idea. Our first reaction back then was, well, he's scraping our website, it's a copyright breach, so we'll take him to court. There was a collective wisdom. If someone can develop an app in a matter of weeks, that it took us another 3 years to get right, why don't we support that? And more to the point, why aren't we opening this data for broader opportunities for startups? So Transport doesn't actually own that app, that's a third party who's gone on to be a great success in their own right. But it goes down in folklore that is a collaboration that we've seen rich outcomes for customers, great success for someone that's got a great idea, and a real collective sort of wisdom that this is where we need to partner with new innovators to take ideas forward. Passage of time, 2012 to now, I think there's a number of apps that sort of sit with TripView in our portfolio, but we've had something like over 7 million customer downloads of those apps, a great success. It's also born, since then we've actually applied it to different areas within transport. We've it's transformed the learner driver experience for young drivers. We've had some great developments for customers with accessibility needs. It really has become a viable option for us to deliver great outcomes. And so since then, and I think maybe this is a point now, just something I want to talk about is our most recent innovation development has been for mobility as a service. We had the Mass Innovation Challenge. As someone that works in government, this is an initiative that's in flight, but something that worthwhile talking about and where we're heading next for this engagement and us talking with you. While we want to partner with individuals to take great ideas forward, it's really crystallised our role as government as to how we orchestrate this and bring a lot of great solutions together. Mobility as a service, it's a bit of a sideline topic, not necessarily directly relevant, but it's a complex issue that's needed to address growing congestion and demands on public transport. And that is, how do we give customers a viable alternative to jumping in their own car for single car use, which is driving up congestion. The solution that we've discovered that we're working through is partnering with with individuals that allows us as a transit authority to orchestrate a broader outcome for customers. But it also highlights that we're very interested in ideas, big and small, organisations, large and little. We've got here that we're partnering with a couple of local startups, as well as Uber and some remarkable international companies as well that are bringing their expertise and ideas into Sydney. What it also does is it sort of highlights that there's lots of opportunity here and forces transport to accept that there is some heavy lifting that we need to do. That we're an organisation now that will, if the outcome before us is worth pursuing, we will invest our time and money to get that done. Whether that be regulatory reform that you've seen with the Point-to-Point Commission and the impacts that's had on point-to-point transport, right through to what do we need to do with our ticketing system to take things forward. But the key message you need to take is we've got an appetite, should the idea be right, we have a high desire to take things forward. Now, if you cast your mind back, where are we though on the broader process? So we've got me bumping the button and turning everything off. What have I done? Oh. It's all right. We're midway through the innovation process. We're up to, I'll say around this stage. What do we want to do next? Is we want to enter the next period, seeking ideas from industry about how we can take ideas forward. So just for what is our next step, take from today that freight, addressing congestion in the CBD is an enduring and important challenge for transport to address, but we can't do it alone. We're going to open for submissions in May an innovation challenge that we will be seeking good solutions that address those challenges. If you don't know how our innovation challenges usually run, sort of maybe kinda, it's not exactly like a procurement process, but we want to open and for a number of weeks, the opportunity for everyone to put some submissions in. We will promote some criteria just to give a bit of a framework that you can respond to. And where this is different, or I'll say maybe not non-traditional, is we will have a pool of seed funding available. We've got a view here that this opportunity, there are opportunities for companies and solutions to be sustainable and viable in their own right. Maybe they just need a little bit of help, bit of application of resources to take it forward. The way, if you do like procurement processes, the way it works is you have submissions, we'll go through a decision-making process, and it actually resolves itself in a request for a proposal to formalise the engagement. You should take away from that these do become a formal engagement to solidify our investment to take this forward and help crystallise some timelines so that we actually are heading to a good delivery. And through the process, we will be having a pitch event. You'll get the opportunity to come in and pitch your ideas. And just a sort of, and it's a bit of an area of development depending on the solutions, but we will be seeking broader collaboration around sharing of data across industry. Now, an exciting sort of addition to this, as we open the second event to take note of, is we call it an industry collaboration event. What we don't want to be an integrator of technology solutions to bring to life. We expect that the submissions that come to us are robust, complete, and implementable. We don't necessarily want to be an integrator. Maybe you don't have the capabilities within your organisation to deliver it by yourself. So we facilitate an industry collaboration event where it is a bit of an open forum. It's optional to present, but if you're seeking a capability and want to potentially engage with others in the industry that might be wanting to partner, you'll have the opportunity to come to this event pitch and network, and maybe find the partner that would make your solution complete. And you should anticipate that will be through May. Thank you. So the key takeaways are that there'll be two events coming up in May. Please, we'll follow up with information about the website to refer to, but you should be looking at the Future Transport Technology Roadmap and website, I do apologise, and the Open Data Hub for information about the opportunity.
Very good. So I've known Micah for a few years now, and I had no idea that he was 15 only 7 years ago. So I think it goes to show you what a hard worker he is here at Transport. I'm sure there's plenty here, people here in the audience that are right now pumped to thinking about ideas that they could be putting towards for our challenge, and it'd be great to have you on board to see those submissions come through later in May. We're now at our innovation panel and Q&A part of the forum, and I'd like to welcome back the following from Transport New South Wales: Stephanie Solder, Director, Transport Digital Accelerator; Mike Stoko, Associate Director, Freight and Servicing Sydney Coordination Office; Micah Starkus, Director, Open Data Innovation at Apps. I'd also like to introduce and welcome Katie McLaughlin, Director, Optus Business. Katie leads innovation within the Optus community, including both industry groups and the startup community. Katie is also the Deputy Chair of the Committee for the Sydney Smart Cities Task Force. Optus is also one of our Transport Digital Accelerator partners. Welcome, Katie. And also just a little microphone 101 for everyone here today. I think this actually goes for the panel as well. As we are live streaming and recording this, you can make sure that the microphone is nice and close to your mouth. That would be great. We're going to have a roving mic around here in the room as well, and that goes for everyone asking a question. So when that time does come, if you could just raise your hand, and one of our roving microphone peeps will be coming over and be able to give you the mic. Firstly, we do actually have some questions that have already been sent through to us. Did we want to? Sure, no worries. Okie dokie, I'm switching over. I won't actually bother worrying, but so firstly, the first question actually is for Katie from Optus. So how do you approach collaboration and innovation at Optus?
Thanks, Richard. That's a very open and broad question. In relation to my role, so specifically I lead our innovation strategy at Optus and collaborative ventures. We've talked a lot about collaboration today and industry engagement, community engagement. We try to make sure that we are in the forums where, industry is speaking with government, with community members, with startups, understand problems better, really understand what is at the heart of those issues, what can we do together to solve them, to create a better outcome for the end user.
That's great. Thank you very much, Katie. Our next question is actually directed at staff. If there are startups out there that are interested, how do they get involved with the Transport Accelerator, and what do startups get by participating in the Accelerator?
Basically we have a website, and one of the slides, which will be the next one if you click forward, will have our contact details on there. But really for the accelerator itself, so we're upstairs, we have an open door policy. Please come and contact us. Our email address will be left on the screen so you can find us. One of the things that our startups will find is that we have some great partners. So I think that the value in actually having people like Optus as a partner of the accelerator means that you're going to get access to not only the government and how do you navigate government and all of our lovely processes, but also industry expertise, so world-class industry expertise around innovation and building products and putting customer at the centre. There is a huge amount of value in that. We have obviously an outstanding open data team, so actually understanding and navigating what data we have, how you might use it, and also we understand and have access to a huge number of experts within transport. So for example, if you're working in freight, for example, we could actually have might can come and actually speak to you to actually understand what the freight problem is from the business perspective. So something like we say, really kind of having an open door so startups can have access to government and speak to the right people with the right information and kind of cut through, rather than at the moment, what do they call, like the 1300 number and go, hi, I've got this great idea. So we're really trying to create that open door.
Cool. Thank you very much, Steph. This one is more directed at Mike. Where do you see the low-hanging fruit in terms of optimising last mile freight in the CBD?
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay,
Look, I think there's a whole, I guess the beauty of this space is that there are so many different ways of actually tackling the problem. I think in the coming years, look, I think we're going to see more of a transition towards using space and putting things on the ground in the CBD, and something more towards a property solution than necessarily sending in more vans. But I think one of the real opportunities, and the point we're trying to get at today, is I think it's actually a combination of various different solutions. Some better planning, incorporating data, looking at the use of space, looking at the use of alternative vehicles, mashing all those together. Then I think we're really in the opportunity of actually looking at what the great opportunities are for the CBD.
Excellent, thanks Mike. Last question here is for Micah. What type of companies are you looking to work for the Innovation Challenge?
I don't think we could draw a distinction on what company we're looking for. It's about the solution and how it addresses the problems. And I think that's the journey we've gone on, maybe from an IT development point of view over the last couple of years. This isn't about us spelling out the requirements. If we knew what was needed, we probably wouldn't have a job by now, because we would have solved everything. So it's about the solution. We really think it's someone's got to come up with someone's got a great idea out there that just needs a little bit of help to bring it into reality.
Excellent. So that means all of you. So well done.
And I just want to acknowledge, we've seen great success from the accelerator, and being in Sydney Startup Hub, that this might require an injection of someone that's not close to the space with the ability, like a small startup that just thinks about an old problem in a new way. We believe that we should be encouraging startups to look at this new space.
Absolutely. No, that's great. I'd now like to open up questions from the floor. Sorry, it's a really tight microphone. We have our first one down the back there. If we can just grab the mic.
Hi. Question about collaboration with industry partners. So we're already solving these types of problems for individual companies. And I noticed that you have some partners that you went on and did ride-alongs with in the research phase and all that. Have any of those organizations committed to working on this program or committing resources to collaborate?
So really for the accelerator, we just went out wide. We contacted as many people as we could, and they just happened to be the ones that responded within the time frame. So it wasn't an ongoing partnership or an agreement with any of those organisations. It was literally, we run a really short program, so we usually do the research within the first 4 weeks. So who could we actually get into the vans with, what warehouses open for us to go and visit. So we just went wide and asked as many people as possible. So no, there is no, for the accelerator, we don't have an ongoing relationship with those organisations. It was literally research.
Very good, great question. Anyone else? We have one over here.
Hello, Michael Bell, Institute of Transport and Logistics Studies, Sydney University. My question is to Stephanie and Mike, and it has to do with statement of the problem didn't seem to include any environmental aspects. I'm just wondering whether noise and emissions are part of your thinking in terms of finding a solution.
Look, there's a simple argument to say, well, if it's more efficient, where we reduce the number of vehicles coming into the CBD, we're naturally going to have a better environmental solution. The point I was talking about earlier, we're conscious of environmental and social aspects that we need to address within the CBD space. I think it's fair, without getting political, it's fair to say, well, we haven't necessarily seen the same environmental approach in Australia as we have in places like Europe and the UK, where it's almost actually contrived what's actually going on, and to be quite honest, in the EU. We've had funding, but there's been funding put into projects on an environmental basis that really are just not commercially sustainable. Our approach has always been to actually think about, well, how do we actually do things that are commercially sustainable, it's kind of upfront, and then hopefully we can drive the environmental benefits from actually those good approaches.
Thanks, Mike. And I think we had another question over here. Oh, sorry, Steph, did you want to add to that?
No, I think it's the same thing. Reducing kilometres, travelling around and around, obviously it's going to reduce emissions as well the freight trips in and out. So it wasn't specifically spelt out. We're quite careful in narrowing the problem down to something we can solve and something that we can track and something we can actually evaluate. So whilst that would be a fantastic outcome, and we do kind of hope and encourage for that, because with the Future Transport 2056 strategy, that's the whole idea. Better place to live, work and play, and that has a huge environmental impact as well. So yes, that's the ultimate goal, but we narrow it down to something, a problem statement that we can clearly define, and that's kind of part of the human-centered design process. So we're not solving for world hunger, we solve for something we can, trial and track, and then report on outcomes.
Actually, I might just quickly throw it to Katie. Was there something that Optus does in the environmental space that, in terms of your planning for innovation, is that you have a particular environmental requirement that you take on board?
Oh, well, I can talk to you about our campus, which is very environmentally friendly. We do aside from that, we do a lot of work with companies. We have an internal data commercialization unit called DSpark, which is actually a startup that we scaled out of Singapore here to Australia. And they do a lot of work with local councils, with small business, large business, to look at people, movement and trends. So it's not about individual information, it's about sort of de-identified, anonymised people flow. And some of the projects that they're working on is around environmental factors and insights that you can derive from people movement, and how not only that impacts on local areas, but what you could do to create better economic, social and environmental outcomes.
Cool, thank you very much, Katie. And a question over here.
Yeah, Peter Scuderi from Arup, and it's more of a comment but also a question to Michael and to Stephanie. So Michael would know I worked on a number of these projects with the bids in the centre of London, and particularly the New West End Company, and getting those numbers down to 9 was a real challenge in a brownfield site, and a lot of it is about behaviours, and exactly what Michael's saying is about the economics, that you've got to have that as a driver. Right through to the new developments like the Martin Place project, which I worked on again with Michael. And in that case, such a constrained site that almost nothing can convince the owners that they've got to go this way. So constantly what we heard during that process was, that's fine, I hear you've done it in London, but this is not London. So show me where it works here. So my comment or question is, if we can A, engage with you really early, because it was a breath of fresh air when you came on board, Michael, on those kind of greenfield sites. And secondly, if we can have access to some of the case studies that you've described here or in other parts of Australia, that we can then say to our clients, it has worked, it's not just theory, here's the examples of it actually working, and that the drivers are efficiency and economics. And the comment about the environment, one of the big drivers in London is the improved air quality. But yeah, I haven't heard or experienced that here. So just
Over to you, Mike.
Look, we investigated some of the stuff around air quality here, and certainly it's nowhere near the scale and the levels that are reported in London. From the perspective of innovation here versus elsewhere in the world, I think the benefit here is we're not at the leading edge of things. There is the opportunity to scour the world and look at the innovations and see how they work, and learn from them. So for example, we've looked around at the various urban consolidation centres that are going on around the world, and when we set up the Corrie Hub, we kind of rejected a lot of the ideas that were being put into those because we didn't see that they were commercially sustainable. We scaled it back, made it efficient to use, and just basically invited companies to come along and apply your own processes to this space that we've set up. And it's still going now, and we're operating on a shoestring, basically, for that space. It cost us very little to actually keep it going, which is great, and it's what we actually set out to achieve. I think if people are saying, well, show me where it works in Australia, I think we actually know there's not a lot of great examples that we can actually point to in Australia and say, well, that's where that's working now in Australia. We're bringing these innovations in from overseas, tweaking them from the local environment and applying them to here.
Excellent.
But I guess that's why we're here today, right? So that's the whole idea of we want to share back, and one of our key insights, the first slide around what we know we need to do is to share our insights, share those case studies, share that information, share all of that customer data, that research that we've done, so that then all of you guys can work off that as a base. So we're in the business of sharing that information so innovation can kind of sprout from that. And then basically opening our doors. So if people do have solutions, we do want to work with them, we do want to speak to them. So that's kind of the idea. We know that it's a problem space. We know that there's a huge opportunity here in Sydney because we don't have this is how you do it and there is the solution. If we knew what that was, we wouldn't be here today.
That's excellent. So ultimately, good artists copy, great artists steal, and we'd like to be great artists in this space. And a question over there.
Hi. We've been looking a lot at transport coming into the city, and a lot of the cause of that being online purchasing. Has there been any research into looking at how you might change consumer behaviour through making it more convenient not to have my online stuff delivered into the city, but more out towards where I'm going when I leave the city?
So I think that was whenever we first started, that was those phases. So that really around that core business model of e-commerce sites actually building out models where people could get it delivered when and where and how and where they wanted it. So we know that there's an opportunity there, but for the accelerator, we decided to actually focus on the delivery process, so that where the parcel movement is happening. So you're right, there is opportunity to innovate in that really early stage in the business model and actually changing customers' behaviours. But we saw, I guess, our role as transport more in the movement of the freight through the city.
Look, we have been looking at that as well. And Sydney trains have been setting up lockers with Australia Post at various stations, because what we actually know, and what's been meant from elsewhere around the world, is that people want to collect their parcels as they get off the train. So that's clearly an opportunity. But again, one of the things we've actually looked at with the traffic coming into the city is the vans are coming in and they've got B2B and B2C orders on it. So and the conversation we've had again with people in the room is about the coincidental drops. And is it better to actually deliver into the city, or is it better to actually send those parcels out to the lockers in Parramatta or Newtown? And that's an area of ongoing debate about what's the best solution for that as well. And it's probably a bit of both, to be absolutely honest, because we know, various couriers are coming in, and they're probably going into our building where we're at in World Square. I see a DHL guy there every day, just working his way up and down the lifts in the building, and he's probably thought, well, I'm coming here anyway, I'll deliver that B2C parcel. So personally, I've yet to actually figure out, I don't know. Now, I hope someone in the room could actually tell me what's the best way to go on that.
Katie, I believe this is at Corrie Park at the Greenfield site. How do you work with getting deliveries into, I guess, the Greenfields area as opposed to the CBD?
That's a really interesting question and probably one I'd have to check with.
That's fine.
You
You don't know shoes, I'm not running order shoes here. Yeah.
Croke Park's a really interesting area at the moment. There's actually only 8,800 residents in the area that we work in. And yet we have, 7,000 people on campus at Optus alone in Macquarie Park. You have the university there with how many tens of thousands of students. You have major employers other than Optus in the area, and you have Macquarie Centre, the shopping centre. Is it still the largest shopping centre in the Southern Hemisphere? Regardless, there's a lot of people coming in and out of that area. Lots of deliveries happening every day. And I know that's something that we like to consider, whether it's in Macquarie Park or elsewhere. I was in a forum last week with a council in North Sydney looking at congestion, but congestion isn't just about deliveries, it's about what everybody else is doing. But what is the purpose of people being in and around that area, be it pedestrians on the street or people in vans on the road or in their personal vehicles on the road. So Optus and Macquarie Park, we try to optimise people coming in and out of the site, not just deliveries, by staggering times of the day that people come in and out, ensuring people are able to work from different locations. And then I know that our delivery guys do also opt for delivery at certain times in relation to what we know about people movement within the park.
You have your own bus network as well.
We do have our own buses, but to be perfectly honest, we do have a lot of other employers in the park ask if they can also use our buses. But the answer is no, unfortunately, because it's there so that it is easier for Optus employees to come in and out from their destination. But then that's an interesting problem to have in and of itself. That's a very Optus-centric view when we have a broader congestion issue in the area.
Definitely. Thanks, Katie. And I think we had another, I'll let Dylan do the triaging.
So solving a problem like this is necessarily complex. It's going to take a variety of inputs, policy, economic, technology. Are you interested in solutions that are, let's say, 90% policy and 10% technology, or does it need to be an app to solve this problem? And secondly, what degrees of freedom do you have over the policy levers? This will take City of Sydney, Coordination Office, state government policy, strata owners, building tenants, all sorts of people involved in it. How much clout do you have on that space?
How much clout? No, I'll start at the beginning, and you'll forget you asked me that. No, I think so. No, this is not just an app. We believe there's a big technology component that will solve something. I'm trying to be pure of thought and not be too prescriptive about what could come to us, as long as we're just looking for something that solves the problem. If there is a regulation change only option that would be appealing, I think we'd always entertain that. But I'll say personally, if regulation would change it, we need to give customers a viable alternative. And I don't think that exists. So if you're saying regulate to stop the white vans coming into the CBD, that won't happen until we've got something that's a viable alternative. How much clout do we have? Look, this is a complex problem. This sort of covers a few layers of government. This is not Transport as a customer of this solution. We're just here to try and orchestrate a good outcome for other parties. So it is complex, but there is a will, and I hope you took from the presentation today, this is a serious problem that needs to be addressed. So if we don't have clout, we've absolutely got motivation to get stuff done.
Great question, great answer. This concludes our innovation panel discussion for today. So I know there's a few more people. I know one more. Okay, we've got one more. Obviously, they've
Thank you very kind.
given Dylan to take time or something.
I'll make it really quick. I'm Ben from Smash Delta. Micah, you talked about mobility as a service, and I wanted to riff on that for 1 second and then ask a question. So one concept that underlies mobility as a service is the idea that you can change the incentives in real time. As congestion and issues flare up around the city, the pricing and options can change. Apply that to freight. That could be incredibly powerful, because I know there's initiatives around smart loading zones and other static solutions, but I think the future is going to be a real-time solution. In your conversation with freight providers or DHL, etc., are you getting a sense of whether they might be open to that future, a future that their behaviour is being tracked more and they're getting good points or bad points for loitering or rolling around blocking up the city or not? I think that could be a big solution, but it would require their openness to that idea. So keen for your sense on that.
So I'd be the wrong person to ask about industry perspectives on incentives. I don't know if we have a position, but as far as generally, like my feeling on incentive programs generally is it all sounds good, but the solutions need to be implementable. Like, does that make sense? Like, yeah, there's lots of reward programs out there. We get lots of ideas like that, but it needs to be able to be implemented. And I don't mean the technology, but it needs to be. We need a path to be able to get it into the market.
I'll just make a comment on that point in terms of industry incentives. I think the biggest incentive is going to be how they can increase their market share by creating a new way or a customer benefit. And if it is easier for a customer or an end user to pick up a parcel somewhere else or nominate, or maybe there could be I don't know, just brainstorming here, a lower delivery fee because of some other kind of incentive of that organisation. It's always going to come back to that from my perspective.
Just a couple of thoughts on that. Look, the walk around that we had in the city this morning with a company, their van turned up at 5 o'clock this morning to get a loading zone space. Now, they would love to come in and love to come and service the customers at 9 o'clock in the morning, but they just know that that's getting harder and harder to achieve. So there's people coming in earlier and earlier and competing for space. Now, and that's just a reality of life. We kind of know from how loading zones are used across the day where the opportunities are. Another conversation recently, we know that people are starting to incorporate AI data into their planning systems. Okay, so how do you actually take those trends, and there was an article in the news yesterday about how people are doing smart parking, about how to find a park, which is kind of similar to some of the stuff Steph was talking about anyway. How do we actually take that information out there, all the aspects of data we can get our hands on, what's going on in the city, incorporate it into a real-time AI system, better planning coming out of that, basically to say, well, how am I actually going to do my deliveries tomorrow?
Very good, thanks Mike. I believe there was a final one that Mike had pointed out. Just final one over here.
Final. I actually got 2 questions, but
oh, no, you're pushing the question there.
The first question maybe is probably already related to what the gentleman asked before, because I work closely to industry in logistics and the properties. So the first one is related to the operators. Stephanie, you mentioned about DHL. You spoke to DHL, Australian Post, tolls. They are heavily linked into transport, 3PL or logistics, and also related to the answer you just said, Michael, on open data. So industry is controlled, they're killing each other, they try to improve their efficiency. The open data is very, my question is, is there any incentive to make those big players to work together towards solutions?
Incentives for collaboration.
So I think the examples that we had up on the board about, Mike, you did that program around tracking where their couriers were actually going, to actually understand where they're stopping, where they're parking, where they're walking, and actually what they're doing. There is a real incentive for them to actually understand better how their white vans and their couriers are actually working. So I think that the information we provided today, I think that is the incentive for them as a business. They can make more efficient decisions. And then for us, there's value in understanding that deaggregate, like we don't need to know like what you're delivering, but understanding the traffic and the movement, obviously from our point of view, is going to make it easier for us to better plan the city. So I think that it's kind of, we feel like it's a two-way thing. Yes, it would be better for those companies in a kind of more of a business model and efficiency point of view. And back to Katie's point, there needs to be an economic outcome. None of these things are actually going to change unless the business is actually going to make money and it's going to be better for them, because we do want them to succeed. That's kind of the point. But then we also need to understand what's happening so we can better plan the city. So, you know, if there can be that, yes, we need to understand how our couriers and how our deliveries are working, but also could that be shared back with government so that we can then understand that, I guess, from a wider transport network point of view.
Excellent, thank you very much for that, Steph. This finally now concludes our panel. Thank you so much for everyone for your questions, and we're going to put a round of applause for our panel. Ask you to take your seats, but Mike, you're not quite off the hook yet, so you can stay up here. Michael will be delivering the closing remarks and we'll be closing the event. Afterwards, please join us for networking and morning tea in the main event area just outside. Thank you.
Scout morning tea. No, thanks everyone for coming along. This is the beginning of what we hope will be an exciting and fruitful journey. As we said, over the next few weeks and getting into May, we'll be opening the opportunity to give us some submissions on some solutions that'll help solve this challenge. I think over the next period though, there's going to be some interesting sort of discussions, and I think you alluded to it with that last question, like sharing data and collaborating across the industry is needed to deliver these good outcomes. How that will happen, we're not sure. We'll work on it as we go, but just know that it is going to be an important element for us to deliver us all collective success. But key to take out of today is please participate. We look forward to some great submissions, and please enjoy our morning tea. And if you've got questions you're too embarrassed to open up to ask in an open forum, just come and grab us. Thank you.